We'd given up our dream of ever owning a house long ago. We'd been priced out post-COVID, plain and simple. I'd accepted our fate. We'd be renting a 3-bedroom ranch from some old guy named Leonard that measured the nicks in the wall with a micrometer. We'd keep forking over cash every month, year after year, always treading water, in danger of drowning at any time. But then we found 27 Hillside Lane, and all of that changed. It was priced way below market value. I should have known then there was something wrong with it. Water damage, fire damage, wasps in the walls, maybe even a ghost or two. But the house passed inspection, and it was now or never. We bought the house. It was the biggest mistake of our lives. I first noticed it when I was cooking dinner on day 4 in the new house. As I lay breaded chicken into the oil, cursing out my picky kids who would only eat the most time-intensive of meals, I felt a soft breeze on my arm. I dismissed it until I turned around, felt it a second time, across the middle of my back, like someone was reaching out and caressing me. I held my hands out and closed my eyes, focusing on the feeling. But there was no denying it. There was definitely a breeze. I checked the vent hood thing, something our previous kitchen didn't have, something that was still utterly perplexing to me. "Eric, did you turn the vent on?" "I don't think so." "Why?" "I feel a breeze." It couldn't be the heating system. It was an old house with baseboard heat and unit air conditioners, built around the 1930s. The real estate agent never told us the exact year, and the Trulia listing played that nasty trick where someone had entered the year it was renovated as the year it was built. "Looks like it's off," Eric said, checking the hood. "Do you feel it though?" He stood still in front of me, concentrating. "Yeah, I guess I do," he said finally. So that was it then. We'd bought a drafty old house with shit insulation. Of course, there had to be something wrong. We'd bought the house in September when it was still warm. Now, well into October, we were getting those bone-cold nights where the air just pulls the warmth out of your skin. We were going to be in for a terrible winter and terrible heating bills. If this was really how drafty the house was. Except the breeze didn't feel cold. It almost felt warm. The chicken was starting to burn. I ran over and grabbed it out of the oil with tongs. "Ava, Hayden, dinner." As I picked off the burnt pieces of breading, I forgot all about it. That night I couldn't sleep because I went down what I call the OCD spiral of death. When I find that one thing wrong and convince myself someone's going to die, or we're all going to die, or the world's going to implode. Here's how mine started. I Googled random breeze in house, and one of the results talked about a gas leak. I had replayed Ava and Hayden's funerals in my head 3 times before I picked up the phone and called the gas company. The kids were already asleep and it was after hours, but I didn't care. I would not be sleeping until I was sure the house was safe. The guy that rang the doorbell was a young, spindly guy of maybe 22. He wandered in carrying a heavy toolbox. Eric had already gone back to bed, thoroughly annoyed that I'd called anyone in the first place. "You're overreacting. We're not going to die. Do it in the morning." Normally I'd snipe back at him, but in the interest of time, I simply ignored him. "So where do you feel the wind?" the young guy asked, getting set up. "The kitchen." He pulled out some sort of meter. It let out a beep. He roamed around the room, then went upstairs and down. Pulled out another meter and did the same thing. "No gas leak," he told me as he set down the meter, pulled out his phone and shot off a text to someone. I hope he knows what he's talking about. "But everything else looks normal?" I pressed. Oh yeah, your CO2 levels are a little high. How many people you got living here?" 4. "Really, just 4? Any pets?" "No." "I guess it's poor ventilation or something." "Everything else is normal though. Radon, natural gas." He started telling me how I could buy an air quality meter on Amazon, but I wasn't listening because I felt it again. The breeze. It was against the nape of my neck, against my ears and my cheeks, fluttering all the little flyaways that had escaped my ponytail. And I realized something. The breeze was changing direction. The little hairs on the nape of my neck fluttered one way. Then a few seconds later, they fluttered the other way. What the hell? "Do you feel it right now, the breeze?" Yeah, I do feel it actually." "Does it seem to be going opposite directions, like in, out, in, out?" I trailed off, swallowing. Like someone's right here breathing? He stared at me, then he lowered his voice. Did the real estate agent tell you what happened in this house? My throat went dry. No. The family that lived here before you, he said, taking in a breath, found dead, all four of them, hanging from that tree outside. He pointed towards the backyard. My stomach fell through the floor. No one would buy the house because everyone thought it was haunted. That's why it was so cheap. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say a word. I choked on air. And then, the guy let out a wheezing laugh. I'm just playing with you. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks. Sorry. Wait, really, I'm sorry. You're not going to report me to my boss or something, are you? I forced a smile. No, it's fine. Damn kids. Okay, thanks. Thanks so much. He packed up. So you're all good, right? I nodded. Thanks for coming out so late. He stepped out into the darkness. I slammed the door, my whole body shaking. Breathing, that's really what it felt like. It wasn't all the time. Sometimes I couldn't feel it. Sometimes I could feel it powerfully. I ended up taking the guy's suggestion and buying an air quality meter. He was right, the CO2 levels were really high. So I opened some windows to ventilate, and because it was a lot less disturbing when the windows were open. As it turned out, however, the breeze was far from the only thing wrong with this house. On Tuesday afternoon, I decided to do some unpacking while Eric was at work and the kids were at school. I was feeling frustrated, both with my work. I was editing photos after one of my family photo sessions, and because it seemed like I'd misplaced my engagement ring for the umpteenth time. Besides, the house was really bothering me. Everything felt too blank, too sterile. It wasn't ours yet, without the ceramic red chicken in the kitchen, or the collage of family photos on the wall, or my photo of an autumn forest hanging in the foyer. So I got out the stud finder, some nails, and got to work. The stud finder was one of those magnetic ones that you hang from a string to find the nails in the studs, so I'd be nailing into wood rather than flimsy drywall. So there I stood, swinging the stud finder back and forth on a piece of tie-dyed yarn in front of the wall, like some kind of weirdo. I waited to feel a tug, waited for it to catch. Nothing happened. I stood there for 15 minutes, repositioning the stud finder, walking closer and further away, holding it at an angle, swinging it fast and slow. The stud finder never found a nail. Am I using it wrong? But I'd hung up stuff a few times before. I never had this much trouble. I tried different rooms, but it never caught on anything. I finally gave up. Instead, I went to get the mail before the kids got home, and everything descended into chaos. When I turned around, I looked at the house, really looked at it. It was an odd-looking house. That much was true. A small Victorian, scalloped shingles painted robin's egg blue with stark white trim. A porch with engraved support columns, bare except for an old rocking chair the previous owners had left. A turret in the west corner with a little spire that poked into the deep blue September sky. The turret was just a facade, sort of. It was just a small out-pocketing in the living room, like a bay window, almost. All of the turret that extended taller than the height of the house was just part of the attic. People always picture some sort of medieval tower with spiraling stairs. I know I did, but it isn't true. I headed back inside, sifting through the mail as I went. But when I got to the front door, I stopped dead. I was locked out. For fuck's sake, I said under my breath. I tried the door a few more times. Then I went around the back, but that door was locked too. I sighed and stared up at the old house. Eric wouldn't be home for a few hours. Even if he could leave work early, I couldn't text him. I didn't have my phone. As I paced around the house a second time, I noticed one of the windows was open in the living room. Of course, I'd left them open to ventilate. I started popping the screen out. The yard sloped gently back though, so the opening was actually a few feet higher than a normal first-story window, which would make getting in a challenge. I set the screen against the side of the house and started to pull myself up. Making a complete fool of myself, I hung on for dear life and scrabbled to swing a leg over the windowsill. I slipped and fell into the soft, wet dirt. Pain shot up my hands and knees. I slowly got up, and as I did, realized there was blood on my hands. I'd cut them somehow when I fell. Defeated, I walked back to the front porch to collect my thoughts. On a whim, I tried the door one final time, my blood smearing over the brass knob. This time it opened. There's something wrong with this house. The kids had already gone to sleep. I could tell Eric was annoyed. He was scowling at me over a John Grisham book, eyebrows raised. The door was locked, I swear, and then it was open. I explained everything in excruciating detail, from the breathing to the door to the lack of studs. How that factored into everything else, I didn't know. I even told him how, when I went to clean the doorknob, my blood appeared to be gone. It just didn't make sense. So, what are you trying to say? The house is haunted or something? I pressed my lips together. Maybe? He laughed. Okay. What? You don't believe me? I think maybe the stress of moving out is getting to you. He closed his book and set it down, looking more serious now. We were in the ranch for almost 10 years. It's a big change. Everything is so new. I'm not having a great time with it either, to be honest. Really? Everything's in the wrong place, all the time. I can't find anything. And it's always too warm in here. I get all sweaty at night, and well, his expression changed suddenly as he glanced at something behind me. What? I guess I noticed something kind of weird too. My blood ran cold. What? Okay, so look at the door frame of the closet, he said. Look up in the corner. I turned around and looked. The wood trim around the closet door was beveled and painted white, like molding or wainscoting. A little fancier than the room deserved, but I didn't notice anything off. I don't see anything. Look, there aren't any seams. I stepped over to the door. He was right. In the corner, I'd expect to see a thin seam where the side trim met the top. But there wasn't any. It looked like someone had carved the entire trim out of one piece of wood, which didn't even seem possible. The closet door was about 7 feet tall and 3 feet wide, which would require a redwood, basically. Maybe it's just really good craftsmanship. I checked every window frame, every door frame. There are no seams anywhere in the house. It doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. My heart began to pound. I felt uneasy, suddenly too hot. Obviously, haunted houses don't exist, he said quickly, as if my anxiety might pull him into depths of conspiracy theory he didn't want to follow. But there is something a little off about this house. I will give you that. I stared at the door frame, my heart pounding. Something was very wrong here. I woke with a start. The bedside clock read 3:43 a.m. I rolled over, wrapping the blankets snugly around me, trying to fall back asleep. That's when I heard it, a heavy thump coming from above us. Every muscle in my body froze. I turned to Eric, shaking him. Did you hear that? I whispered. Hear what? Something in the attic. He muttered something about squirrels and bats and how it was nothing to be afraid of. I shook him harder. Finally, he sat up in bed, groaning. Okay, he said, pulling on his pants. I'll go check it out. I rocketed down the hallway to check on the kids as he pulled down the attic hatch. By the time I made it back, he was already halfway up, bare feet on the old, warped fold-out stairs. Do you see anything? I called. No. I watched him disappear into the attic, the shadows overtaking him, completely covering him, like the darkness wasn't just the absence of light, but something. A presence. I held my breath, listening to his footsteps thump above me. Wait, what is that? My blood ran cold. Hang on. I shouldn't have gone up after him. But in the moment, the curiosity, the dread gripped me, and I catapulted up the stairs, phone poised to dial 911. When I found Eric, he was standing at the far west end of the attic, the corner where the turret was. He was standing in the doorway of it, where the attic pocketed out into the turret's final floor. His form was blocking whatever he was looking at. Eric, what is it? For a moment, he said nothing, not even turning around to look at me. I don't know, he finally answered. What do you mean you don't know? I walked towards him, my phone's flashlight scanning over the unfinished space. Insulation hung out of the walls like tufts of cotton candy. Plywood creaked underneath my feet. I quickened my pace, and then I peeked around Eric's shoulder. into the space. Lying on the floor was a twisted rope, wet with some kind of fluid. My eyes followed it to a shape slumped in the corner. It looked roughly humanoid. For a heart-stopping second, I thought, oh no, the previous owner never left. But I realized in the light it wasn't a body. It was something hewn from knotted wood, in pink, fleshy insulation, in splotches of white drywall. Parts of the house shaped into the form of a person. Something sparkled on one of its wooden fingers. My engagement ring. As we stared in stunned silence, there was a horrible snap of wood, and I swear the thing tilted its head. Eric and I raced across the attic, down the ladder, but I could feel the wood moving underneath me, shifting, buckling, trying to get me to fall. On the last step, I lost my footing. With a shriek, I careened backwards. Pain shot up my back. My head felt like it was being split open. I scrambled to my feet. Pain shot up my leg as I limped towards the kids' rooms. It felt like I'd sprained my ankle. Eric woke the kids and we scrambled out of the house. In the driveway, as we packed into the car, I could see movement. Movement in the attic. A humanoid shadow looked down at us from the turret window.